remote Naval Academy training facility, a decorated SEAL general known for valor, restraint, and a past scarred by sacrifice, walks into a moment of cruel harassment directed at her by a group of arrogant cadets. They think she's merely an administrative officer. They don't know her history, her rank, or the power she holds. What she chooses to do next doesn't involve shouting, threats, or even visible anger, but a silent, devastating act of honor that exposes their character and transforms the academy forever. Before we dive in, where are you watching from today? And if you enjoy powerful true-to-life stories of courage and dignity, please subscribe so you never miss the next one. The hallway fell silent the moment she stepped into the doorway, silent except for the cruel laughter still echoing against the concrete walls. 3 cadets, shoulders squared with youthful arrogance, had cornered a smaller first-year recruit. Their words, sharp as broken glass, sliced through the air just as the woman entered, her presence unnoticed at first. "Say it," one cadet demanded, crowding the trembling recruit. "You're useless. Say it." The recruit's voice broke, but before he finished, the tallest cadet noticed a shadow stretching across the floor behind him. He turned. His smirk faded. She stood there, tall, still, unreadable. Her uniform immaculate, her ribbons heavy with decades of history. Her gaze fixed on them with a calm so unnerving, it felt like the building itself was holding its breath. None of them knew they had just harassed the most decorated special operations leader the academy had seen in 2 generations. And she had heard every word. She was General Alyssa Raines, though most in the special operations community spoke her name with something resembling reverence. She carried herself with a quiet gravity that made even seasoned officers stand a little straighter when she passed. Her posture was effortless, her step soundless, her gaze heavy with the weight of memory. Her face bore a faint scar near her temple, a thin, pale line earned during a night operation she never spoke about. Her eyes, steady and dark, held the kind of stillness only those who have seen too much can carry without breaking. To these cadets, however, she was just an older officer walking the halls. Someone to ignore. Someone to mock behind her back. Someone who wouldn't understand the culture of the young, the bold, the untested. They were wrong. As she watched them now, her expression remained unreadable, but inside her chest, something tightened. A familiar ache sparked by the sight of cruelty used against the defenseless. The first-year recruit still trembled, staring at the floor, unsure whether to flee or brace. Alyssa stepped forward. The hallway grew colder. Alyssa Raines had enlisted at 19, carrying nothing but a rucksack, a cheap wristwatch, and the shaky determination of a girl who had buried her older brother only 6 months before. He had been the one who wanted to serve. He had been the one who dreamed of the SEALs. She had only followed because the grief was too heavy to carry alone. The military became her anchor. The ocean, her confessional booth. Every pre-dawn swim, every shivering mile in the cold surf, every punishing drill washed something out of her, fear, doubt, helplessness, until all that was left was a clarity she had never known. She rose quickly, not by force of ambition but by force of necessity. Her first deployment carved new scars, her second carved deeper ones. By her 5th, she had seen enough tragedy to last a lifetime, yet she stayed because someone had to. On quiet nights in those barren, windswept outposts, she often imagined her brother walking beside her. Not a ghost, not a memory, just a steadying presence. A reminder of why she served. Years passed. Her legend grew. She earned commendations she never displayed, medals she rarely touched, and respect she never asked for. And somewhere along the way, she learned a truth she carried like a compass. Power means nothing if it's used to crush the vulnerable. So when she stepped into the hallway that morning and saw a recruit being demeaned, cornered, belittled, broken, her pulse slowed, her breath deepened, and the entirety of her past sharpened into a single point of purpose. The cadets straightened as she approached, but not out of respect, out of irritation. They assumed she was interrupting their lesson. The tallest one, Cadet Harresing, folded his arms. He was broad-shouldered with the kind of smug self-certainty found in men who had never been punched by life, never been humbled by loss. His jaw jutted forward. "Mom, we're conducting a peer evaluation exercise," he said, dismissive. Alyssa said nothing. Her silence unsettled them more than any reprimand. The second cadet, Morales, cleared his throat awkwardly. "It's part of team building. Toughen them up, you know." The recruit finally dared to lift his eyes. Alyssa saw the small, ashamed tremble in his hands, the kind she remembered from raw recruits who had seen their first real casualty, or from young soldiers who realized too late the cost of belonging. Other cadets watched from a distance. They pretended to be busy with their gear, shuffling notebooks or adjusting uniforms. But no one stepped in. No one challenged the harassment. They stood in complicit silence, letting cruelty pass as tradition. The academy hall felt suddenly too small, the fluorescent lights unbearably bright. Alyssa inhaled once, deeply, a breath that steadied the air around her. Still, she did not speak. Her silence stretched like a drawn bowstring. Harrison mistook her quiet for weakness. "Look," he said, gesturing dismissively, "some recruits just aren't cut out for this place. We're helping him by showing him where he stands." A flicker, barely perceptible, passed through Alyssa's eyes. A memory, sharp and unwelcome, her brother's last letter, written on a night he had been hazed by older trainees, ending with the line, "I'll be fine. It's just tradition." Tradition had stolen him from her long before the war did. Another tightening in her chest, accompanied by a slow, rising heat. But she kept it contained like she had done her entire career. Emotion was not a tool she wore on the outside, not anymore. The recruit's breath hitched when Harrison shoved him lightly in the shoulder, a final insulting nudge meant to reassert dominance. Alyssa stepped between them so quickly, so silently, none of the cadets realized she had moved until she was already there, standing inches from the offending cadet. Harrison blinked, startled. "Mom." Her eyes lifted to meet his, and in that calm, unwavering stare something in him faltered. Alyssa held his gaze. Not once did she raise her voice. Not once did she break posture. Not once did she show anger. Her silence became the weight of judgment itself. Heavier than shouting, harsher than any disciplinary lecture. A phrase came to her mind, one she had spoken to countless young recruits over the years, though she did not speak it aloud yet. Leadership is measured not by who you can break, but by who you can lift. Down the hall, unnoticed by most, the commandant of the academy, Admiral Keating, had appeared. He had been walking toward the administrative wing when he heard raised voices and paused to observe from a distance. Keating recognized Alyssa immediately. He had served with her. He had seen her carry wounded soldiers through monsoon rain. He had seen her walk calmly into fire when others hid. He knew her silence was not a lack of action. It was the warning before the tide turned. He folded his arms and waited. Alyssa finally spoke, her voice quiet enough that the cadets leaned in to hear it. "Cadet," she said to Harrison, "what gives you the right to strip dignity from those entrusted to your leadership?" Harrison flushed. "We weren't." But her gaze held steady, slicing through excuses he hadn't yet formed. "You mistake dominance for strength," she continued. "You mistake cruelty for discipline. And you mistake your inexperience for authority." Each word landed without force, without malice, just truth delivered with the precision of someone who had lived its consequences. Morale swallowed hard. The third cadet stared at the ground. The hallway filled with cadets now, silent spectators drawn by the tension radiating from her presence. No one spoke. They watched with the reverent fear one might have when witnessing a storm gathering over open water. Alyssa turned to the trembling recruit. "What is your name?" "Reeves, ma'am." His voice cracked. Alyssa nodded once. "You did nothing wrong." Reeves exhaled shackily, a small, fragile relief. Then she looked back at the cadets who had tormented him. "Report to the parade grounds in 10 minutes, she said. "All of you." Harrison bristled. "But..." Alyssa's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in the slow, suffocating stillness of someone who had commanded men in life, or death silence. He stopped speaking. 10 minutes later, the entire cadet company stood assembled on the parade grounds. News of the confrontation had spread like wildfire. Whispers rippled through the ranks, mixing with the crisp bite of the morning air. Alyssa Raines walked to the front, her presence turning whispers into stillness. Admiral Keating stood behind her, watching. Harrison, Morales, and the third cadet stood stiffly in formation, faces pale. Alyssa addressed the whole company, not with a lecture, but with a story. She told them about leadership without ever saying the word leadership. She told them about responsibility without speaking it aloud. She told them about the cost of cruelty, not through moralizing but through her own lived scars, memories of soldiers who had been broken by their own teams before ever reaching the battlefield. When she finished, She stepped aside and let the silence settle like dust on old gravestones. Then Admiral Keating stepped forward and spoke 5 words that changed everything. "Cadets, meet General Alyssa Raines." A collective gasp rippled through the formation. The harassers' faces drained of color. Their arrogance evaporated. The truth crashed into them. This woman, this calm, quiet, unimposing figure, was the highest-ranking special operations leader in the region. A legend. A survivor of battles they had only studied in textbooks. Now they realized the depth of their mistake. When Alyssa turned back to the cadets who had harassed Reeves, she repeated a line she had once told a young soldier years ago. "Strength is not proven by who kneels before you, but by who stands because of you." Another line followed, spoken softly, but it carried across the entire field. "Honor is silent. Dishonor always speaks the loudest." Every cadet felt those words settle in their bones. Alyssa didn't punish the harassing cadets with expulsion or humiliation. She assigned them something far heavier: service. They were ordered to train under her direct supervision for the next 3 weeks, side by side with the very recruit they had tormented. Day by day, she broke down their arrogance, not with pain but with accountability. She made them hike beside Reeves, carry gear with Reeves, stand guard with Reeves. She forced them to see him not as a target but as a teammate. Slowly, shame reshaped them. By the final week, something astonishing happened. Harrison began defending Reeves from others. Morales apologized sincerely. The 3rd cadet quietly became one of Reeves's closest training partners. At the graduation ceremony, the 3 former bullies stood at attention, but when Alyssa passed, they lowered their eyes, not out of fear but out of deep, humbled respect, and then, unexpectedly, Harrison stepped forward and saluted her first. A ripple spread through the crowd. Soon, cadet after cadet followed, until the entire company stood in one long line of silent respect. Alyssa did not smile, but something softened in her eyes, a rare, quiet peace. The academy changed after that day. The story of what happened in that hallway spread far beyond its walls, becoming a reminder repeated year after year. A reminder that leadership is not noise, not power, not intimidation. It is, as Alyssa often said, the art of lifting others when the world has taught you only how to break. And so, as this story closes, the narrator leaves viewers with a quiet invitation. Where are you watching from today? And what does honor mean to you? If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the silent heroes who walk among us every day, consider subscribing so their stories of dignity, courage, and transformation continue to be told.